what I'm picking up on here, man. You know?
Yeah, I know.
Yes. Oh my God. Okay. All right.
Trust me, that happens with
Way more
everybody.
often, yeah.
Well, because Simon, I swear, like I said, he's MI6 or something. He's CIA. He's like a James Bond type of
You
guy.
guys
Just-
are the
he brings it
craziest,
out.
most unlikely pair, man.
That's what
That's what makes it awesome.
it makes no
Right?
sense at all. Yeah. It's
I love having contrast. I think the best art, whether it's architecture or poetry or music, it has opposing contrasts that complement one another and work beautifully in concert together. You know, and if people could realize that with all the things we've been talking about, right?
Yeah, that word harmony. There
You
go.
know, it's not there. People are driven to want to be, opinionated wankers, basically.
And I believe but I've just been culturally appropriated.
Exactly. I just culture appropriated the Brit here. But the thing is, we're all on one planet here. And the funny thing is, I went to Africa years ago in West Africa. Are we recording right now?
More than likely.
Okay. So
no, I can.
'cause this is a great segue into why festivals have become so freaking important.
I was trying to catch Simon in a good one, but we'll go ahead and as long as everybody can hear it. I wanted to hold on one second. It was a good segue into festivals. I guess we just started.
Yeah,
recording.
you were going to hit about your time in West Africa, and
Yeah.
I mean, I've been there too,
okay,
so I know
cool.
the place.
Cool. Why were you there?
Oil and gas.
Oil and gas. So you're part of that issue. Okay, that's cool though, man. That's cool.
Oh yeah, and I was. Oh man, here we go. I was employed by the Russians in laying Nord Stream 2 pipeline in the Baltic as well. Just to throw that out there. So yeah, I am that guy.
Okay. People, I swear to God, I'm not handcuffed, and there's no waterboarding happening here. Not yet, anyway, right? I'm just gonna
No, we use diesel.
Diesel. Oh, that's right. The diesel boarding. Good Lord.
And the night's still young too. So
The night is young. Speaking of that, and of which, the conversation segued into Africa because I was talking about art. And if you look at art and if you check it out, there are always the elements of two contrasting materials, whether it's architecture or music or poetry. There has to be pain in order to find the beauty of putting it into prose. There has to be, an understanding on being honest with oneself to, make it translate through a song. And just as well, you put stone with wood with metal, that's a beautiful architectural design. So it's these two contrasting elements that kind of conjoin to really make a beautiful, harmonious whole, which takes me to Africa. And that's what we were talking about. We don't think much about Africa. We try to just kind of look at America, and then we try to say that we think about Africa, but are we really? So being in Africa, and I'll never forget the first night I was laying there, and the Atlantic waves were lapping, and I was on some crazy anti-malaria medication that they would give you, and I had the old school stuff, right?
Yeah,
no one
I had
told
that.
me it made you psycho.
It's yeah.
that stuff
I've
they
had
gave us in the army.
Yeah.
I never took it.
The wildest dreams.
Oh my God.
I mean, they were disturbing.
They were disturbing. So I stopped taking it after a few days, but in the beginning throes of this medication, I was in my room, this little shack, and I had like a tent that I had to sleep in and completely keep the mosquitoes out for fear of malaria because I stopped taking the medication because I couldn't take it anymore. But I was listening to the waves, and it was just interesting to me, we are truly on the same planet here, and I think the people that are bickering and fighting all the time, how were your childhoods? Were you bickering and fighting all the time? You bringing that into the world, what is it you're trying to do exactly? So being in Africa, what I noticed was the students that went and visited the slave forts and were all about, the plight of Africa. They were the first ones to yell at the children wanting, a coin or something, or wanting, a little bit of help, And yet I didn't buy into that. And instead I played music for the children, and they would gather and we would share Coca-Colas. I mean, it's really a commercial thing, as far as, Coke and a smile, share a Coke. But for real, I didn't go visit the slave force. I need to do that because I was in the present day and trying to connect with people as they are, not because of what they look like. And it was a beautiful connection. My nickname was Positive. They called me Positive. And we would all be hanging out in the streets, and it was just a beautiful, beautiful connection,
Whereabouts in West Africa?
It was Ghana. So I flew into Accra, and then we went to Banaba up in the bush. But it was mainly on the coast of Accra there. So
Right.
it was a music school that I went there to study. It was a drumming school, but I wanted to learn the palm wine guitar, and I was actually in search of bringing over a couple African musicians that I had yet to meet back to the Appalachian Mountains and kind of show the connection between the ngoni, which is the African stringed instrument, with the 5-string banjo over here in the Appalachian.
I'm just trying to picture exactly where.
Accra.
Yeah, where the heck?
So look at the very underneath of the left.
That's in the Ghana Ivory Coast sort of
It's
region.
below
yeah.
Ivory Coast, and it's right up underneath when the continent of Africa kind of like comes up and around.
Yeah, I was in Congo and Angola.
Wow, so you're more central.
Yeah.
Yeah, how was that?
Interesting.
I imagine. I read a book about a guy that went down to Congo, and it seemed pretty insane.
Yeah, we drove through the bush
Mm-hmm.
at one point through Angola into the national park and the bush, and I just had it was.
What year was this?
Let me see.
He has to be careful.
2014, 15.
Okay, wow.
Somewhere around there. Maybe a little bit later than that, because I was all over the place.
Which, for all of our conspiracy theorist fans out there on the show, are going to start piecing these puzzles together. And their first question is going to be, why in the world was a sailor in the middle of the bush?
That's
in
what
Africa?
I'm
What is he
wondering,
doing
man. I
there?
mean, what are you doing there? I have an excuse of music here.
No, we were just looking to get out, and we had to go through the bush to get to the airport.
Okay.
And
From Angola.
I think that was when I was in Angola.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I went to Kenya on the east coast, and I've been up into Libya, around the Gaza region as well. That's another story in its entirety.
I'm sure.
And Morocco. They've got quite a little bit of North Africa, along with, deep West Africa.
And what do you think about the whole African situation?
It's such a messed up country.
Well, it's a continent.
Well,
James Bond.
there's
Are you talking about West Africa in itself?
and-
West
and,
Africa's
well,
our country.
every country is messed up in Africa.
That's a true statement, and
It's
I
an
understand
entire-
why.
Well, they're ripe
you
for
would say such a
exploitation right now too.
Well,
and they've always been exploited. Now,
And you're looking at a lot of European boundaries that were put in place to exploit mineral wealth and what have you.
Of course.
But what they didn't take into account was the tribal boundaries within the European geographical boundaries.
same problem in the Middle East.
It's not exactly the same problem.
Well,
It's very much tribal still there. I mean,
absolutely.
They still have tribes, and it's a different way of thinking and different way of living, and trying to conform people into kind of swallowing a whole nother, way of living. It doesn't work that way.
And do we really think they just did it and didn't think about the consequences? These are the same people who have drawn borders in their own country. Surely they had to understand all of the implications of drawing an imaginary line right down the middle of one tribe and then splitting them into two, being the minority in two bigger countries. You know what I mean?
I don't think they were considering the tribal aspects in any way, shape, or form. This was all about empire building,
Money.
and
But if you do
power.
if you do divide it like that, divide it amongst the tribes, then you've always got guaranteed conflict going on, so nobody's paying attention to you.
Oh, the conflict was already going on. Man.
But the new lines assure that it continues to go on.
yeah, to a certain extent.
And
to a certain extent,
But
for sure.
I wouldn't say that was contrived, from inception to be that way. I mean, those cards fell that way because of
There were
empires
empires
and
to
greed.
build, man. I mean,
Yeah,
shit.
someone got to make a buck somewhere, right?
Well, that was a nice 10-minute intro into the show.
But African music. Here's what I want to say too. And because I love music so much, and there's so many wonderful influences in the whole African diaspora and its effect on the world. One thing I noticed being over there, even though that it was so poverty stricken and kind of depressed, obviously economically, was the joy, the pure joy that people feel, man, when they're with their families, when they're in community, when they're using music and dance to communicate and relax and celebrate, with each other, and the joy that brings was unlike any other joy I've ever seen around the planet. African people, for sure.
Oh,
Yeah.
when they get, I think one of the biggest influences of recent times on the Western music culture was Graceland, when Paul Simon put the African choirs and the percussion behind his music on the album, and it
definitely introduced the West to that music.
You know,
that was
obviously
South Africa.
Well, then South Africa, you've got for me one of the best artists that was, unfortunately, Lucky Dubé.
I had Lucky Dubé the first FloydFest.
Just
oh my God,
really,
I love that guy, and he was really tall, and it was really funny because I also had Joseph Hill from Culture, right?
That's unreal, because when I was in the Caribbean, it was all, it was all Bob Marley and reggae, and then I heard the African interpretation of reggae through Lucky Dubé.
Wonderful.
And the guy is the fact that you had him at FloydFest blows my mind.
Yeah, man.
Because he's one of my greatest sort of silent reggae artists that I hold in such high regard is Lucky Dubé. That's wow, very cool.
You know, he was a tall guy. He was very stoic in his demeanor. Put on an exceptional show because his band was just top-notch performers. And he would just kind of sit by himself when he ate, and he was always in a kind of a meditation. And I'll never forget walking up to him, and by accident I called him Joseph, because Joseph Hill was there too, and I had just been with Joseph, and he looked at, "Don't ever call me Joseph again." And I think, of course you want to be humble and respect. Say, yeah, man, I'm totally sorry, but at the same time, I didn't mean it. I'm just moving really fast. This is my first festival. I'm trying to get everything together. And it was really cool, and then it was fine after that. But it was no trip about, oh, I'm sorry. Oh my God, let me go run and hide, No. And I think if you we were talking about this earlier, if you keep an open perspective, you can communicate with almost anyone.
Exactly.
As long as they're not a sociopath.
And the tragedy, just the music and African beat behind Lucky Dubé is. If you haven't heard Lucky Dubé, just go plug it in. He was an amazing talent, and the tragedy is, I believe he was murdered in Pretoria.
I think he was robbed or something.
Or was it Johannesburg? He was in a robbery in his home country of South Africa, which is going through so many troubles right now.
He was shot, yeah.
And he was shot and murdered, and that's a huge loss for the South African music industry.
Bad things
reggae.
Happen to good people sometimes.
Yes, it's shocking. But anyway,
sometimes it's like that, man.
You're just going, how the hell did you know this shit? I know what's going through your head.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I guess on that, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Appalachian Podcast. That was a nice 13 or 14-minute segue into it, and it was phenomenal. I'm your host, Billy Riddle. With me, as always, is my co-host who thinks Yellow Submarine is a masterpiece, Simon Winch.
Well, good afternoon. That was a great segue. We've just...
A great opening. It was magnificent.
Yeah. I mean, we just hit so many points with...
And I mean, and we're being joined here today by Kris Hodges, one of the founders of FloydFest. So everybody out there knows exactly what we're talking about when we're talking about that festival and his part in that whole deal. And I'm blown away because I'm sitting here, and this is why I love Simon on this show, because this is the first time we've all met, and Simon's sitting here talking about somebody I've never heard of, and I guarantee you 99.9% of the people who are listening have never heard of. And Chris is like, oh yeah, we had him at the first festival. I'm like, this is why I have
you
Simon.
Can't make this up, can you?
Simon will.
I also had Doc Watson on the same stage.
I saw it today.
Lucky Dubé, Doc Watson, John Schofield.
The Lucky Dubé angle is blowing my mind right now.
I love reggae music. I love reggae music a lot.
Yeah, but his wasn't Caribbean reggae. His was very true African reggae.
Who else? Salif Keita is African, I believe, does reggae, right? Yellow Man, or is he African, or I can't remember if he's from the Jamaica side of things or not. But reggae is a great music. Of course, Bob Marley. That's where you cut your teeth. And
we saw Ziggy Marley. It It was in Turks and Caicos. I was actually captaining a boat that backed up to the beach that Ziggy Marley was playing on.
I have another story. This is going to be connective. So I had Ziggy Marley back in 2014 FloydFest Revolutionary, right? FloydFest Revolutionary, and I had Ziggy on stage, and of course he sounded great. And he had this big kind of, Latin kind of guy, man, huge kind of like, gangbanger looking cat, man. And people were throwing glow sticks all over the place. And this guy, while Ziggy's singing these beautiful songs of love and, all these things, he's cussing at the crowd. Don't you throw those glow sticks. It's freaking out. I'm like, yo. And I walked up to him. And I was like, I know you're doing your job, but it's just glow sticks. Don't you tell me what to do. And I just kind of was like, I laughed at him. I was just like, this is kind of ridiculous.
Chill out, man.
Chill out, man. And it was cool. But Ziggy's great. I love Ziggy.
And that was where I was wooing my wife.
Ah.
We picked her up from a part of the beach a little bit further down. She got a launch out to the big boat. We took the big boat in, backed it up, anchored out, had lobster, lots of rum, obviously, and probably some illicit things too. And listened to Ziggy Marley under the stars on a boat.
Beautiful.
I mean, it was just off the chart good.
That sounds wonderful. So you had known her prior to this final courting?
Well, yes, I had, but that's another story because I first met Heather in it must have been 92 in Grand Cayman. And she was on a family vacation. And she was on the dive boat that I was working on. So when we met in, I think, 1999, we kind of, I looked at her and I thought, no, I know you from somewhere. And it turned out that she was on my dive boat in Grand Cayman, and we put all this together. And at that point,
it's meant to be.
Ziggy Marley, and the rest is written in history.
Beautiful.
It was special.
Well, I got to say, we'll go ahead and before we jump. I even hate to do it. You got to do the maintenance work, though. I wanted to thank Buddies tonight for the food. We went by there, got some brisket.
Thank you, Buddies.
Got some loaded fries. It's actually first time I have been able to purchase something under the new name. So Buddy Hancock still runs it, but is now the Rocky Mount Smokehouse. Uh-huh. So be sure to go down there.
It's not the Appalachian Podcast, but Smokehouse.
You know what? Me and Buddy need
pork house. I like it, dude.
We
That's a good name, man.
I suggested that to him a couple weeks ago on the Spike Show, and
I can't believe he didn't take the bait.
Didn't even take me seriously.
Oh, really?
Didn't even take me seriously.
What a shock!
So I mean, but you know what? Buddy's a great dude. We can always count on him to show up and help us out when we need it with this show. And I love supporting him. And we need to set up there for one of these cruise-ins Rocky Mount has. We need to go in there. Now it's getting to be the hot time of the year. So maybe in like September, October, when it cools off, we set up the tent. We do a show right there. We talk to some of the guys with the cars, do that whole gig. We got to get
for sure.
Buddy on here in a couple weeks as well. I talked to him the other night. We're going to try and get him on here because it's been a couple years.
Well, I actually want Buddy involved in the Stay Local Franklin County, the Morris Hotel Farm to Table Store cook-off. As a judge or participant, I'm not sure. I mean, this is under development as we speak, but there is going to be a cook-off. It is going to take place at the Morris Hotel.
What are y'all cooking?
And well, this is all about local produce from Franklin County.
Okay.
So protein and whatever starch, vegetable.
So I'm still back on the smoked meats train.
Oh yeah,
with Buddies,
Absolutely.
Which, by the way, the brisket was exceptional. Buddy, thank you. The sauce, delicious.
Oh yeah. So the cook-off could be fun. We do it's formulating as we speak, but it's all about Franklin County, the farmers, local produce, stay healthy, eat healthy.
Maybe lamb, something unique, something a little different.
There'll be some interesting dishes that the judges will have an opportunity.
We'll have Gail with Melvin's Farm to Fork jumped in on the mix of things.
I think Gail is going to be a judge.
That would be phenomenal. That's another place that helps out the show quite a bit, everybody.
Oh, yeah.
And if you were talking about Cooper's Cove kind of area, anybody that's listening on here, Cooper's Cove, you are a 10-minute ride down to Melvin's Farm to Fork if you're in that part of Roanoke. You can go right down the mountain, be there. best meat, local produce, fresh trout, all kinds of stuff. And once again, you're supporting local people who take that money and reinvest it back into this community. The more money we keep here, the more wonderful things we can
The
have.
healthy the community.
Exactly. And why go spend your money in a grocery store that ultimately the people there at Kroger, they're all nice. I love the people there. I've known them for years. That's a good staff. But the people at the top making the calls don't give a rat's ass about you. Gail, if you got a problem, you go straight to her and tell her about it. She wants to put a good product out there. She's not going to screw over. You know what I mean? And you're going to talk to her. But you're not going to have those issues because you're getting quality stuff. You're getting quality and stuff not full of steroids and hormones and the bad stuff that you're putting in your bodies that are freaking ultimately killing us.
5% water content in chicken. Why?
Yeah, no.
How,
Go there and get the good stuff.
You say 35%?
No, it's they say up to 50. Is it 15% or 5%?
Something like
in
that.
their chicken is whether it's got, I don't know, water or whatever maybe.
Well, back to the Africans when I came back from Ghana and I brought two groups back with me. One Nitete Tete and the Kuson Ensemble, and they were kind of a traditional African Ghanaian band, and then the African Show Boys who were from the north who just had this kind of theater kind of show. But they would come over, and I'd bring them over every year from 2003 to 2006. And they would make chicken and rice, which I loved.
Beans and rice.
So good. But they would always say that this chicken is not chicken, it's bread. What is this? It's not chicken, it's bread. Because it's the hormones and steroids and everything in our chicken here, man. It's like bread. Where you get a real chicken, it's like, more flavorful, more darker meat, more juicy, and it's not as big.
Very different texture.
Very different texture, but it's delicious.
But that. I think we're beginning to educate people into healthy local food, which is cool. And you touched on something again about Africa, and it'll come back to me. That will come back to me.
So much to say about Africa. So much.
Oh,
to say.
And also, let's not forget about Brian down at the Burger Company, Rocky Mountain Burger Company. They're a huge help with the show. Did a great event a couple weeks ago with Spike. Anybody coming to town on our show, we can hook you up over at the Early Inn. Stay there for the night as long as he still owns it. Hopefully, look, if everybody listening to the show threw in $5 or $10 a couple times a month, we could buy that place up for $1.5 or $6 million and make our own little compound there. Make a compound. We got a music venue built in. We got a place to stay. Call it the Appalachian, podcast compound. But Brian, he's such a huge help down at the Burger King. Every time we go down there, it's always good food. It's always good service. All the wait staff is phenomenal. And we're going to start doing some more shows upstairs in the private room as well.
Well, he's such an articulate guy. When it comes, I mean, the guy's just he's a very educated, articulate, passionate guy. And I wish him, and he will be, his success is already written in stone. But there's a man that, if ever deserved it, has won it, and he's earned it. I mean, he's doing a great job.
Yeah, good guy. Really helps out.
He kind of lets his kind of character come through in an honest way that people can relate to and appreciate, kind of a thing. Yeah,
he's very approachable, and he's done some political stuff, about setting certain things straight. That there's only a certain mind can start delving into some of the complexities of legal structures and how things are set up and why they're set up. And his mind is in tune with that. And he pushes back. And this is what, as citizens, we should all be doing. Apathy is not your state of fucking mind. It should be engagement. So, well, that's almost a t-shirt. But Brian is the guy that puts a lot of facts and research behind, how we should be living a better life without government involvement and some of the shenanigans that goes on locally.
Well, the Appalachian Podcast, a place where we can promote your business and drop an F-bomb in the same sentence. It's a beautiful thing we got going on here.
Buckle up, folks.
Really
Buckle up. We're just getting started here.
So, the only other thing I wanted to mention before we dove right into it, couple things or two things. One, thank Jim and the guys at Living Proof. Last week we had they had the memorial service for Matt Chandler. amazing golfer. Huge on the music scene around here locally because everybody knew him. He was always out at shows. He played a little bit himself. His dad, Bubba, plays quite a bit. And I didn't get off till late on Wednesday evening. So when I got back in, it was 10 o'clock, and they were texting me saying, hey, we're still up at Living Proof, and they're going to leave it open until we leave. So went up there and probably hung out till about 11:30. And then I told everybody, well, come back to my house. We'll have a beer on the porch. And unfortunately, that ended up being half the freaking bar. So at 11:30, 11:45 on a Wednesday night, I've got 12 drunks outside of my, just being loud as shit. I think the only people that fortunately couldn't hear them were our kids, all the rest of the neighbors and everything. But, I guess it goes, it's just, in tragedy, you always try and find that happiness. And for us, that was the first time, or at least for me, selfishly, that was the first time a lot of us had all been together since college in 20 years, unfortunately. So, Matt's brother Mitch made the trip, obviously, from Texas. First time I'd seen him in a while. We all used to party at Radford back in the day. So to be sitting out here, I was like, the hell with it. My neighbors, I've never done this in 6 years.
Celebrate,
here.
Man. Come on.
You know what I mean?
Celebration of life.
So thanks, Jim and them and Holly up there at Living Proof. Tip them a little extra next time you see them for keeping it open a little bit extra after the memorial service. And one last thing, too, is our boy Nick Robertson. I know we mentioned it on the last show that he got his call up, and last week he made his debut after we recorded. He went in, I think he pitched 2 innings, no runs, no hits, 3 strikeouts. The boy is throwing heat. So huge congratulations to Nick. That's a Franklin County cat.
Nick.
That's a former guest on the show. We had just 2 or 3 months ago, we were speculating, well, he might make it up by the end of the season if they do the call-ups. He's been lighting it up in AAA. First day on the scene, major leagues, made a huge impact. It was great to see his family up there on the show. We've shared the on our Facebook page, Instagram, and Twitter. You can all go see his first at bat when he struck the 3 straight strikes look, and the guy never swung. And this was their top prospect in their entire organization.
That was a quality batter.
1, 2, 3. Yes, it was. That was a phenomenal batter.
And
Nick got him, man. Boom, boom, boom.
Yep.
He took him to the cleaners.
Yeah, clearly. He was focused. He wanted it. He was hungry.
Yep.
So we love that. We love supporting, and we encourage everybody to go back and listen to Colby Helms just signed a music contract. That's huge for him.
Colby Helms, man. Old Dolph Ramsey reached out. Yeah, man. And it was like, Kris, what do you have to say about this cat? And I was like, well, he's legit. And he's like, well, good, because we're taking him on under Ramsey Records
love Colby.
management.
Colby's an awesome kid.
Colby's great, man. Good job, Colby. You're kicking ass, bro. You're doing it right.
With his 57, was it a 57 Gibson or a 57 Martin?
He's definitely playing a Martin for sure.
It's a 57
I haven't
Martin.
seen him play electric yet. Have you? I don't know.
No.
But I used to play Gibson J45 was my jam when I song wrote. That's a great guitar.
Yeah.
But yeah, Martins are the guitar of choice for sure.
That's
around these parts for sure.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, that's the guitar I sent my brother in New Zealand.
There it is, man.
That was what I was going to come back on. Boom. It eventually struck the synapses click.
And I got 2 things I want to say for sure too.
You were talking about the tribal influences in Africa on the music and how you can hear that African beat, and it's a unique sound, and you know it when you hear it. Same with the New Zealand Maori sound, and I got to hear that in, I forget which stadium. It was a big stadium show with Crowded House.
Out in New Zealand?
No, in London.
In London, okay.
And they turned up with a whole Maori choir and band.
Really?
And I mean, and if you know Crowded House.
Oh yeah, I love Crowded House.
You know the influences and that sound, and they were able to replicate it on a stadium stage. It was off the chart. That's what New Zealand, that was...
Music is the best form of communication and connector.
Of course it is.
That the human race has ever produced outside of nature itself. It is just so, when it's done proper, when it's channeled properly, when it's not pretentious, when it's, not posed. I mean, it's a beautiful, wonderful exchange of energy, man.
Nature is music.
Yeah, straight up, man.
It really is. Like,
I think Raylan Baxter said it best. He was like, if I can't hear a song in the babbling brook, in the wind in the leaves in the trees, if I can't hear a song in that, I will never be able to write a song. So you have to be in nature, I think, to hear the song, to be able to, let the song come through. And which, is unfortunate because a lot of people have detached themselves from nature and they tout wanting to, be, saving the earth and everything. But have you lived in nature in the woods by yourself for years on end through, snow, wind?
And then come out with an album that's everything has been synthesized. It's a drum machine, and it's sampling. I just can't. I can't do that.
I like EDM. I'll say it, but that too has to have a soul, and it has to be done correctly.
Right.
I think any music can be sterilized to death, and it's not going to come across.
Overproduced.
Yeah, or you get all these people wanting to do it just for ego. Hey, mommy and daddy didn't love me. Look at me. I'm playing now. Do you like me? To the same 10 drunks in the bar. It's like, come on, dude. And if you're in a shanty town in Ireland, that might be one thing. But America, something's off here, man. The identity crisis is really a epidemic.
Oh yeah, it's disturbing. The fantasy behind it is just like
everyone. I think the social media thing has turned people into these identities. I think it's turned them into keyboard warriors, and I think people are selling stuff that isn't real, and no one knows what's real anymore. So you got a bunch of sneetches meeting in the middle of the path, yelling about whose dot on the belly is better or not.
Mike Tyson said it best. Social media has God Almighty, I can't even quote it now. He said it's like has given people the ability to be able to run their mouths without fear of getting punched in the face.
Oh, it's
Much,
ridiculous.
you know what I mean? Like,
it's ridiculous,
and it's the truth. It's and what I attest what's going on to people who got picked last on the playground.
Straight up,
really, and a lot of times those people who get picked last, those people who get cut from the team, what do? Michael Jordan turned around and turned into the greatest basketball player of all time. He got cut early. Man. Other people
go through the challenges and troubles.
They start blaming everybody else for them.
Refine your character.
You just don't like me.
We all have to die, man. It's like we're all dealing with the same shit sandwich.
We are, absolutely.
Okay? No doubt about it, man. We all have to die. And we have this impending thing that, I better get mine while I can, and I better be seen and heard while I can. And that's just not the route to go. It's just causing a lot of frustration, not only individually, but collectively.
Well, the whole ego starts with, I have to leave a legacy behind.
Oh my God. You just nailed it. You just nailed it. I had a conversation with a cat. Hey, look. And it was down at my river property years ago. And I was like, I'm a drummer and I can play a damn good beat. And I've studied all kinds of music and I really enjoy it. And I play it because I love to play it for real. I already know who I am. Drumming is just an extension of what I like to do. So, yes, sir. I told this cat, listen, man, I like FloydFest. I've really committed a lot of my life to it, and it's been kind of not about me. It's been about the challenge of rising to what I am capable of personally. It's a personal challenge. I want to test the boundaries. And I was like, it's a cool legacy, but I'm already legacy. I was born a legacy. I don't need FloydFest to make me legacy. But if I wanted to make it a legacy, it's kind of a cool thing to leave to my children, to give families happy memories, to give musicians a platform to develop their careers and have fond memories there as well. And this cat looked at me and he cocked his head and said, I wonder if I can get some of that legacy. And, I saw it. I saw it right when it happened. And that was a few years back, One thing about going back to Africa, and it's funny how Africa has kind of been the foundation underneath our conversation today. When you're in West Africa, one of the things I noticed, and I was there with a bunch of French students and Australians and a few Canadians and just maybe a small, I was one of maybe 3 or 4 Americans there out of a group of about 40. And what I noticed was Africans are so intuitive and so keen on a bullshit meter. And the way that they would make fun of people that weren't comfortable with themselves and weren't being honest with themselves, first and foremost. Fuck being honest with another person. If you aren't honest with yourself, then it ain't going to go any further, man. It's just kind of okay, we're all fools here. Do you want to play it? Do you want to realize it? What do you want to do here? So, that's being honest in West African culture was a beautiful thing. All you had to do was be yourself, man. And it's like my son says, well, why is it so hard for people to be cool, Dad? I don't know. You're just cool or you're not cool, and it's a funny thing.
People will crucify you around here for being honest and being yourself.
Oh, and that's the way it is in America generally. It's like this forced kind of PC falling in line, kind of don't say what you want to say. And it's a dangerous place to be. I like living in the creative mind. I want to expand. I want to grow. I want to learn. I want to embrace this beautiful, colorful wheel of just so many different thoughts and ways of thinking and being, but at the core of it, being honest, man, and letting it come through your heart, man.
Kris, you gave it away when you said you were a drummer. Because I was going to say, Kris, tell me musically, you're either a drummer or a bass man, because I knew you were going to be one of the two.
I'm a drummer through and through, and I've always said to myself, I'm really just a drummer. You know what I'm saying? Boom, boom, motherfucker, boom, boom.
But yeah, that's,
nailed it.
I knew you were
Nailed
one of the two.
And you can tell, if you know music, you can tell who's playing what, you know.
Uh-huh.
Singers, guitarists, bassists, posers, drummers, of course. Percussionists, man, love it.
Yeah, bass players that
I love it. I love music.
the best fights within any band are between the drummer and the bass man.
Oh, see, I was going to say the drummer and the singer, man. But you're right. The drummer and bassist, because they're locked in together. They're so close. They're so close to one another. They got to be on point.
And if they're not, man, it's a clash of the titans. Because here it comes.
And I always say a band is only as good as the drummer. So I feel for all you bass players playing with lame drummers, man. I feel for y'all. You got to make it a real challenge and a real art to play with that kind of rubbish. But see, look, I'm doing it again.
You're doing it.
I'm
We've
doing it
suckered him in. And now, your thoughts, okay? This is interesting. Being a drummer, you'll know how Ringo Starr sounded different as a drummer.
Oh, of course. You know, when I was younger, people would always bash Ringo, and I'd be like,
oh, no.
And then I started listening to him, and his complexity and beauty in his rhythm is so sublimely complex and yet so simple at the same time.
And how did he do that? He was a left-handed drummer.
Left-handed drummer, that's right, man. That's right, exactly.
So everything,
and he played like a right-handed drummer. That's exactly right. So he could always lead with the low end and come up on the top end.
That's how he did it.
That's how he did it. Thank you you were just reminding me of that. And that is a brilliant thing. You know, the most unlikely scenarios will create the most timeless sounds and situations.
And he's instant. I mean, the guy was so consistent, you knew it was Ringo Starr playing on that track.
Great drummer.
And
love Ringo.
So under...
appreciated?
Well,
what?
No, I think he's very appreciated.
Okay, good for saying that, because I do hear people bash him now and then. Like, you don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
You obviously don't know what you're talking about, right?
Yep. Wow, that was a moment. And bloody Billy's sitting back here just with that smug grin going, You've done it again.
Well, no, I'm sitting there. I mean, I'm looking 7 years, 10 years in the future, whatever. I'm thinking this show would never persist without Simon here, because there's no way I could ever be able to communicate. You know what I mean? Like I enjoy doing it, but God Almighty, Simon, just his stories and his.
Well, I was saying you guys are such an unlikely pair, and it's wild. You guys match perfectly in the end of the day, and thank you. You're really flowing here with a great conversation. I appreciate your perspective.
Yeah, I mean, but it's just knowing that, you know, I've dabbled in the industry, and that's all I'll say on that.
Well, with Simon, I'm smart enough to recognize, you know, and I've been doing this show for a couple of years now. Simon has been an integral part of it for 8 months, but a part of it the entire time. He was on a handful of shows previously, and this is a saturated industry like everything else. Everybody wants to be a music promoter. Everybody wants to be a podcaster. Everybody wants to be an influencer. But you got to find something that's different, something that's a niche. So when I started this show, you know, there's nothing really focusing on the Appalachian region, number one. Number two, there's nothing called the Appalachian Podcast. So it's trendy and it's easy and it's something that you can pick up on. So if there's nobody around here doing it, you could be the first to the table. But everybody's also got a niche. There's 1,000 true crime podcasts. There's 1,000 sports. There's 1,000 music. There's none that are really just focusing on people in this region, something very simple. But you need somebody also in the mix that's almost as interesting as every single guest you have. And That's not me. I'm really not. I can facilitate. I can move the show in a direction. But Simon is the fucking talent here. And that's just, and this is my baby, but Simon's talent.
You're making me very humble now,
Billy. But it's the truth. You have to find people who have life experiences, and I have a ton. That's why I can relate to Simon. I've been around the world. I've done a bunch of crazies. I've had a good time. Both of our paths are extremely different. That's why we're able to come in and kind of mesh them together and be able to communicate with almost anybody we bring on here, but Simon even more than me. I mean, been to many more countries. I mean, professional athlete and CIA and music industry and yacht captain. I mean, he's done it all. So so for me, it's a treat to get to sit back and listen to. It's like me, y'all. It's like having a second guest with Simon every
absolutely.
show.
You can't say you worked and dabbled in the music industry without telling me what you did, because that's my world and my life, and I'm always interested and so intrigued in other people's experiences within it.
I had. Damn, here we go.
Yeah,
we told the story. It was on the Colby show, but
it was on the Colby show.
It's been a while. We've got to do
very briefly. And that's another story in itself. How I get to meet this.
Oh, that's right.
Fine mentor of mine at the time, and he took me under his wing. And I later found out he was the former manager of the Rolling Stones, David Bowie, Jerry Rafferty, all those.
This was after he had managed them.
Yes.
Okay. All right. And where did you meet him?
Turks and Caicos.
Okay. Right. Okay.
So anyway, we ended up.
That's where you meet cats like that.
Oh yeah. Sure. I mean, it was the weirdest thing as well, but that's another story. And it's a good one. So we'll save that for another date. So I got involved with Robert and realized that he was, heavily involved in the music industry. We ended up getting one of the guys he held in greatest respect for rising talent.
Yes.
And he got him down onto the island, and we facilitated a recording studio on the beach and let these guys get at it. We got all the equipment down, sound booths, the whole studio, and we made a small studio. And whilst they were doing that, we ended up taking a boat, and I was running it in Italy, and we were wondering where the direction of this project was going.
And were you working with primarily musicians from the Caicos Islands?
No, these were just the two guys that we brought in, along with some engineers.
Got it. Okay.
So they were doing their thing on a number of tracks that were already in existence but needed polishing. So anyway, I remember this bar. It was in Napoli, in Italy, and we just got into drinking a lot of champagne, and we concluded, whilst trying to get back to the boat, that we needed to put a recording studio in LA. And the next morning, we kind of woke up, and I'm up on the bridge looking at charts, and he comes in. He goes, "Well, that conversation last night." He goes, "I think we need to pursue this." I said, "What conversation?" And he said, "Oh, about getting the recording studio moved to LA." And I went, "Well, okay. We're in Italy now. How are we going to do this?" He goes, "Well, there's the phone. Make it happen." So we found a recording studio and house in Wonderland Avenue, which is a very famous part of Laurel Canyon. And we moved the island operation to Laurel Canyon, and tried to get this one act that he was so unique in his writing ability and tunesmithing.
From out in California.
Yeah. So anyway, we got them into California, and that's how I got involved in that studio development for this one artist. And
was it like a 3-year kind of cycle?
I think for the whole project may have been 2 to 3 years, and trying to get this the number of tracks down, rewritten, new material. It was a great experience, and that was how I got into.
And prior to that, no experience in the music industry whatsoever.
Well, absolutely none at all. But what Robert had realised was I had an ear for a melody, all the complexities of music. He recognised I had an ear for it, and he said, "Well, just make it happen."
Excellent. I've always liked all kinds of music, of course, and it's funny, the complexity of melody and rhythm and what makes a great song. And I still listen to Taj Mahal, and I'm just like, the simplicity and the complexity combined. I like musicians who are more on the natural end of the spectrum, who can naturally just pump it out, and clearly they have rehearsed and practiced. And
well, there's people that can write lyrics. There's people that can write melodies, and all sorts of song smithing. which was the Elton John and Bernie Taupin combination, but they couldn't do it and cross paths.
Right. Individually. Right.
This one guy, Cam, just a dear friend that we've just recently reconnected. He could do it all.
Some cats can.
And he had it. There's no question about it. He had it. He still got it. And it's a shame we couldn't make it happen. But hey, that's just the way it rolls.
That's the way it rolls.
Just the way
It
it
either
rolls.
happens or it doesn't. I mean, it's a combination of ingredients that I think makes anything really pop. And sometimes it doesn't roll like that.
Yeah. I mean, he had
is he still working? And
oh yeah, he's still working. He's not working with the guy Tim that they were both working on the project together. Both just super talented folk.
I couldn't imagine being a professional musician like that. I mean, I think let's take Colby for instance, okay, that you brought up. I think Colby is young enough to where he's in that flow of it, and if he just maintains that flow and keeps doing it for the reason of why he started, which is the love of sharing his sound, what he's developed. That's one thing. I think a lot of musicians get disillusioned.
Well, he'll find his area of success and be happy with it. It's when
cool, and that's what I'm saying.
And as soon as you bring in the ego and believing
Boom.
Your own press,
boom,
that's when you're going to walk into problems.
Yes.
But
yes.
if you're down to raw talent, I
was just listening to Rick Rubin this morning, the podcast he did with what's the guy's name? An Indian guy, I believe. Wonderful. He was talking about this, about being yourself and not allowing the ego to overrun. And it even, you can read your own reviews and you just laugh at it, whether they're good or bad. You don't take it that seriously,
Yeah, and you can't, and I think musicians, and the way the structure used to be, because this is the structure. I mean, before it all went, what was the big distribution digital network that came out?
What, Napster?
Napster. That changed the music industry radically, for all the right reasons and all the wrong reasons.
Welcome to planet Earth.
Yeah, you had to redevelop the concept of how you were going to generate income for songs that you wrote and earn points, and you got all that good stuff from, and not necessarily being the performer. And those complexities in the old way of doing it then had to get digitized, and Napster blew that whole thing apart. So I don't know whether and Ed Sheeran is a great example of being a success in how he's taken the new way of marketing himself and his music. I think he's done it the right way in that crossover period, and I think he's one of the biggest successes in how he did it. But I think the market now is a very difficult challenge to navigate as an artist.
Ed Sheeran, 85,174,053 monthly listeners on Spotify. Yeah, I'd say he figured out how to do it.
He figured it out, and he was very driven,
and he practiced his ass off too, man.
Well, I mean, the guy's an absolutely gifted genius.
He is incredibly gifted
when it comes to that. But he navigated how to make an income stream from an evolving market that really hadn't been developed at the time. And I'm still not saying it's developed now.
And there's only a handful that really get those kind of numbers, and I think that's, if you're in the creative business, you got to get creative.
Oh, absolutely. And look at Ed Sheeran.
I mean, he got creative and made it work in the evolving landscape, and there's always going to be an evolving landscape. I think the danger to art and even making money off of art is just expecting or assuming it's just going to be static forever, instead of forcing your creative mind to figure out ways to reach the people.
Well, it was all about the record companies, the A&R men, the distribution deals, and that changed so radically.
It was such a closed circuit
with digitization. You weren't looking to sell singles and albums anymore. Now it went to CDs. CDs, you could copy the shit out of. Then they had to work how to protect that. Then it went to digital. and downloads, and it's been a minefield of an industry. I think for the artist to navigate, the true artist.
Yeah, the performing artist, the musician kind of a person.
Mhm.
I remember there was this question posed years ago from guys who split off from Red Light Management, and they started. I forgot what the name of that company was, man. But they were like, "Is art dead? Will it?" With this very question in mind. How it's been digitized and all these things. And going back to Africa, it dawned on me that people will, if you have a rock, if you have a guitar, if you have a voice, there will always be music. And I think defining what your level of success is, I think the glamorous kind of pop star kind of like ideal of success, I don't care what anyone says. I think it's rather has the potential to be very empty. And I think if you forget that you are of service to your community, to your friends, to your family through music, you're going to lose touch in what the magic really is, And I think Ed can maintain that for sure. But just speaking to like what art is, it's like it's never going to die, no matter what medium tries to wrangle it, lasso it, and sell it. It doesn't matter.
The big thing now is
Doesn't matter.
we don't own our music, right? When you bought an album,
Sure,
that was
recorded
yours.
music.
Right, it was recorded. You owned it. Now with all the downloads and the digitization, and the other side of digitization, for me, and I definitely do not profess to be a sound snob, but when you digitize and download, you are not getting the fullest tone from the music,
Breadth of frequency.
and that's exactly it. And not too many people appreciate that. There's quite a few that do, but there's not many.
Why don't
that
y'all explain
grasp
that for the people who don't know what you're talking about? Because that's
So
really,
digital
really
music is a
It's
series
compressed.
of zeros and ones, and it's compressed very
so it's
down.
binary.
Yeah, so you're just
Not
getting a
binary music.
representation of the tone of bass. You're just getting the reputation, whatever I just said, replication of like what the high frequency is instead of the actual high frequency, which has
Yeah.
a very particular
So
wave.
it numbs. To me, digitized sound doesn't have the full volume of tone. If that's the right way of explaining it.
Sure.
If you were to play, and this is why this is coming back into vogue, are LPs, coming back with LPs with super balanced tables, some phenomenal valve amps, some speaker systems that are just off the chart, with varying frequencies, so you get the full range of tone from playing a record, more so than you would from playing it through your phone, through a
Bluetooth.
Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, whatever it may be. Even if it's a Marshall, even if it's what are the fantastic there's another piece of kit out there that does it very well for Wi-Fi. It's got great punch and depth of bass, but you're not getting that
Sonos or something.
that full tone. And it's because it's digital.
Does this have something to do with what they call the God note or whatever? Like how music has been recorded on two separate frequencies over the years, and now it's changed. Do y'all know what I'm talking about when I talk about that?
Yes, I do. And that's got
like
something to do with
hertz or something. It's
Well,
one's higher than.
you go into those Gregorian chants that touch on that. But what I'm talking about is the full depth of you will pick a location, whether it be Abbey Road Studios or the Albert Hall or what 5 Points, and it has an acoustic signature that is unique. So when you record, you're catching that resonation.
You sound like a studio engineer.
Well, no, I'm not.
And you talked about being in the studio, though. But you do. You sound exactly, because these are terms and understandings that a studio engineer, because you're exactly right. the quality of a space is going to directly affect the quality of the.
So then you've got to catch that.
I taught him quite a bit at Quantico. I mean, they do classes, all kinds. I mean,
clearly. I got your back. I'm watching this guy.
I mean, they'll send him to ski school. They'll send him to snowboard school. They'll send him to IndyCar. He's got to be able to know how to get in any vehicle and get away if he has to. He's got to ski down the mountain. I bet he knows how to ski and snowboard.
Of course, I know how to ski.
And I guarantee you, he can get off. That's what they do to these guys. They send
James Bond style.
Very much.
He
is. He's. Not.
But
quite.
You sound like an audiophile. I mean, I feel like I'm talking to a sound engineer from a studio because
But that's what you're looking to capture.
Absolutely,
absolutely. But when you release it digitally, you've corrupted it because you've compressed it into ones and zeros.
So what does that mean exactly? For how we exchange music, will it force people to want to perhaps go see live shows with real audio systems?
Therein lies the problem with live shows, because the live show is very difficult to replicate over a broad space where you don't necessarily have acoustic control. You can try and get it, but
that goes to the quality of the performer themselves.
And the atmosphere.
There's been some shitty rooms, and I've seen some exceptional performances in shitty rooms because the musicians are exceptional.
Right. And the sound guy knows how to not bounce sound.
Maybe, yeah.
So yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's some. So for me, it's, and we're seeing this resurgence now in playing LPs with these high dollar
analog
decks,
kind of
an analog and valve, and we're seeing this regression, and I think for the quality of sound, that's a great thing, because then you're really hearing what the musician wants you to hear, because that was the environment that they recorded in, that was captured at that point in time, and it hasn't been manipulated digitally
to death.
Well, you can get overproduction, and there's countless people overproduce all their albums, and that's just,
I always like the artists
it's called musical masturbation.
Can do wonderful in the studio and translate that live, even if the live show, and I'm talking about outdoors. I'm an outdoors guy. But being able to translate a studio sound really shows the quality, I think, of the arrangement, of the performer, of the composition, right? If they can translate that to a live, that's what I always look for. And sometimes there are only bands that can really kick it live because that's where they thrive. And there are bands that can only kick it in the studio because that's where they thrive.
Grateful Dead, I think, would be a pretty good live example of that.
Yeah, they were great live, but their studio albums were amazing too. They had a lot of wonderful. Jerry Garcia's studio stuff is some of the best, man.
Yeah.
So
a lot of people don't even know Jerry Garcia got his start in music. Huge bluegrass fan.
Oh, big time.
He loved it. And if you go back and never listen to a lot of the old Jerry Garcia band shows, he dove into a lot.
What was the name of his first band? Foggy Mountain Boys or something?
Something like that. I can't. It's been so long.
What was it, people? I think it was something like that.
I can look it up right now, but you're
up.
absolutely right.
Cool.
So what's the name of them?
The Heart Valley Drifters. I'd never heard that before.
I really thought it was because Jerry. I
really thought it was the Foggy Mountain. Maybe I'm thinking Foggy Mountain Breakdown, but I thought it was the Foggy Mountain Boys. I don't know. Maybe I'm just
a different iteration of another band he had at some point in time. But I know we throughout this show and through other conversations we've had here today. Of course, here we are an hour into the show, and we're finally just getting, to talk about, Kris, what most of the people that would tune into this show or anybody is going to know is FloydFest. And we were talking about festivals and stuff, and what a ripe area this is for music. A lot of the guests we've talked about having on this show, we were talking about Caleb Flora, and your eyes lit up because you've clearly met him somewhere down the line. And we were talking about him having the Twisted Cow Festival. And I think what ended up screwing Caleb big on that deal is he just pissed off the sheriff deputies and he wouldn't play ball with them. Honestly, that's what because they ended up showing up one day and kind of shutting him down and stuff, which really pissed me off quite a bit. Honestly, that's a whole nother discussion we can have about it. But Caleb, of all people, there was two or three there were two or three food trucks down there. A bunch of people were camping, had wristbands, the whole shebang. You show up, and I don't remember all the bands. I'm pretty sure Kerosene Willie was one of them, but I know Mason Vi, who's currently with Old Crow Medicine Show, Morgan Wade, who's blowing up all over the world, and Crawford and Power, who just got done opening for Travis Tritt all of last year, and who we've seen over at 5 Points here recently. Caleb had all of those people in a tiny redneck thrown together festival here in Rocky Mount, Virginia. So if Caleb can do that, imagine what you could do with something like FloydFest or anything. But where did you meet Caleb at? I'm kind of curious why your eyes lit up, how you would know him or what story you might have.
Well, I mean, you come across a few different characters, and some just have such a kind of a outward appearance and impact, and Caleb was that kind of a guy. He came up in some overalls. It was at FloydFest, of course.
Of course.
And
He loves it.
It was probably late at night. What's that?
Tie-dye, probably.
I've seen him in tie-dye. I think he didn't have any shirt on. It was just overalls and a straw hat.
I've caught him in a kilt once.
And cowboy boots.
Wasn't pretty.
Yeah, I'm sure it wasn't. But there's all kinds of characters. But back to, going back to the music, I think why it's cool that Caleb and others can present some of these performers who are legitimately working in the outer and greater world is the fact that we are living in one of the richest musical heritages in the world with Appalachian music, man. I mean, country music, Appalachian music, it's rich, man. It's like deep, and the whole world love it. So we are lucky to be so connected immediately to this huge wealth of authentic music, man.
Absolutely. We were right here at the beginning of the crooked road. Like, it starts right here.
I mean, this is a rich spot, and it runs all the way down to, Tennessee, North Georgia hills, it's like this really, really thick with the music.
And I know you've heard Caleb Flora play the spoons.
I have. And he was telling me.
I can rock some spoons too. Caleb, we're doing a spoon off, brother.
Oh, I'm not quite sure how that should go.
Hey, maybe.
Whoops.
Hey, hold on. Maybe.
It could go a lot of different ways there, brother.
Maybe that could be part of our 4th of July private party celebration event, as Caleb and him doing a
spoon off.
I'm down.
A spoon off right
I'm
there
down.
on the
I'm
stage.
totally down with it.
Oh, that's a hoot.
Caleb, bring it.
Lord.
Oh, in fact, oh my goodness gracious, it's all coming full circle. I was 3 sheets to the wind. FloydFest, I had David Vi and a few other crazies, and I was like, let's just create a good scene down there. So all the string players were down in this little encampment. And one late night, probably, I don't know, Saturday, Sunday, Friday, I can't remember, I started playing the spoons. And this girl said, "He sounds like Caleb." And now I just put it together that it's that Caleb.
It's that Caleb.
Oh, Caleb, we got to rock some spoons, man, because I love it. Once you understand how to do the spoon and you get it between your hand and your leg and your whatever, it's amazing rhythm.
Oh, I'm telling you, like I said.
That's it. Caleb Flora, the spoon man.
80% of the shows, like, we should really honestly rename this podcast to the Connections of Caleb Flora show or something.
Oh, my God.
They say there's 6 degrees of separation.
He sounds like Caleb. There it is.
Yeah.
I was like, wow, Caleb must be pretty good, man.
Everyone knows Caleb.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Everybody. I mean, the
That's
beer scene,
awesome.
the music. So, but
He calls me every week. He calls me every week. Bless him.
And
Love him to death.
I try and answer every week, but I always try and call him back, and I'll definitely call him back after this show. He'll enjoy this one. And his dad's such a huge supporter of the show, too, Van. He's always showing up at our events and stuff like that. I love him to death. And it just goes further back into the whole deal about this being a huge, music
The
area.
whole world's looking at it, guys.
They really are.
The entire world is looking at this area of music.
And let's talk about, the big ones around here. I mean, for the past decade or so, you have been within earshot distance, if you live here, of within 2 phenomenal festivals, FloydFest and Interlocking. And I don't know how much you know about that, or if you're in tune with those people, or have ever dealt with them,
Very much
or been to
so.
that show.
Very much
But to have 2, because there's music festivals all over the country, right? There really are. But Interlocking
more
and
and more
FloydFest,
and more every single day.
Interlocking and FloydFest, to be right here within earshot distance of both, are 2 of the most unique music festivals you're going to find. Because you go to Interlocking and you've got amazing musicians and bands meshed together for a show that have never played together. So you'll get like string cheese and Zach Brown will make the Zach Brown incident. Or you'll have, Chris Robinson and Brotherhood playing with some of the guys from the Grateful Dead. Or you'll have, I've seen, just
Krungbin and Trey Anastasia
Yes.
and Derek Trucks, you know.
So what? And I have never been to FloydFest. Okay, so I've missed out. I would love to go to FloydFest, and I know there's stuff going on that we're not going to get into any great depths about. But what is the destiny of FloydFest? Because I'm hoping that FloydFest in some way, shape, or form is going to resurrect itself into the old FloydFest. Do you think that can happen?
You know, I said it in an interview recently. They asked me a similar question, you know, and how do I feel about FloydFest and where it's going and what it is. And I simply responded by saying, listen, you know, FloydFest was a lot like a child, you know, and I did my absolute best to raise that child as properly as I possibly could, you know, and
very successfully.
As a parent, you know you're not going to be perfect, right? Yeah, and that's what I came to. I came to the fact that one, after raising this child, it's up to. I just hope that child can make its way in the world.
Okay.
You know, I really do. I hope it can. I accomplished everything that I set out to accomplish with that festival. Everything. I accomplished the mission at hand, which was to reach people off of just pure passion, to bring them together in a holistic kind of way that was not religious based, that was not politically based, that literally allowed a forum for people to listen wholeheartedly and openly with each other, and to gain new friends and families, and to reach a wider audience with a diverse lineup of music, and really showcase the local wealth of Appalachian music here. I accomplished all that. I did. I made it a national reach, pulled 7 countries annually in 48 states. But and FloydFest, I wanted it to be as big as it could possibly be. And a lot of people say, what does that mean, the old FloydFest? What does that mean? Does that mean, a backyard party that the promoter loses his tail on that's really great for people? Or does it mean making an impact in the professional industry and keeping it grassroots and local feeling at the same time?
Well, that's a toughie right there.
And that's a real trick to do.
Oh, yes,
and I think FloydFest managed to do that, during my transition, one thing I've realized, and we talked about bubbles earlier, it's hard not to get locked into the bubble, right? To me, I work in the wider industry. So FloydFest was a representation of my lifestyle ideals. It was a representation of the kind of the lifestyle of Floyd itself, the artists and the farmers and the people and the musicians up there that want to live on their own accord, but collectively as a community, and be individuals and be themselves, but still, support one another within the community. And it's a beautiful ideal what Floyd represented. So that's what FloydFest really meant. And, when the old FloydFest, I hope that the people that are taking it on understand the heart and soul of what Floyd County really is, and how that represents. You want to go local, you want to talk about, how to impact the world. If you showcase the best aspects of a local community, that's the way to change the world, because the world's looking to where the promising communities are, because it's confused as to what the global community is.
So FloydFest, that's a monster statement right there. So FloydFest, with its impetus, hopefully, is going to be able to be the phoenix from the fire, from the pit that it is currently in, and perhaps the community is the one to drive that.
That's an interesting perspective. I think if the current people really want it to thrive, then they will work as closely with the absolute community that they can, and that means everyone, from the farmers to the people that were part of the early FloydFests, to all of the relationships built in that regard. I hope that the community and the FloydFest operators now can really find that common ground and work together, because that's what it takes. It's all about relationships, and I think not being able to have the festival this year, it does boil down to relationships, It's taken me 23 years to develop honest relationship. Do you think I would have lasted 23 years? Do you think I would have ever been able to have a festival year after year with no money, no real backing, just a drive and an honesty that I learned in Africa about being an honest person and being driven with your heart and soul? Even, talking to this old school cat, Tom Pickett from Greensboro, North Carolina, that owns this land. And even though he was hard to deal with it at sometimes, I'm sure I was hard to deal with it sometimes, but we found a common ground and we worked together pretty harmoniously for 21 years, man.
So do you think the community that has been behind the success of FloydFest in years past is going to be able to come together and make the new FloydFest?
It remains to be seen. There was a lot of disgruntled neighbors around that site. For whatever reason, I think, when we first went to the Parkway location on the line of Floyd and Patrick there, I remember they were really afraid of Stompin' 76 and that we were bringing this, crazy cacophonous kind of crowd that was just going to descend upon the area and, sleep in people's yards and everything. It was hardly the case, I sat down, my ex and I, my partner in crime, both in life and in business, Erica, and we talked to Tom Pickett, the guy who owned the land, and he, one of the first things we agreed to that was going to be a family event, and that meant something to me as a new father. So I wanted to make it even not only holistic with all different backgrounds and people and everything, but age groups. I wanted a child to feel safe because truth be told, I got the concept for FloydFest living on a commune in Floyd, Virginia, the first commune that ever came to Floyd, Virginia, Traviana Farm. Came up there in 1971. I lived with this cat, A. Court Basin, who was an ethnomusicologist and a luthier and a musician and a poet and an artist and probably one of the most hilarious and brilliant thinkers I've ever met in my life. And so, with those lessons that I learned from A Court, I knew that it was going to have to be, and if you wanted to make an impact globally, because as artists and freaks, you want to make an impact on the world. You want to change the world. That was kind of the drive, growing up as a punk rocker, and growing up trying to understand, all of the divisive kind of situations around the world over, I wanted to condense that and understand how to attract all the same people at once in a beautiful way, kind of like a Mecca. If you go to Mecca, Malcolm X himself realized that the world was actually together when he finally made his way to Mecca and said, oh my God, it's not about color, it's not about anything. Are you a good person or are you not? And I think, proving that with the Tom Picketts, with all the people and being an honest person, having a family event and still having national rock and roll acts and bluegrass acts, I think it really pulled the whole picture together very nicely.
So was that down to the location where we had some agreement? I think something was going on at the old place. I think we've got some discontent with the new venue. I'm not going to go into that either. I just got to figure out how can such a good thing replicate itself, not necessarily at the old location. There's going to be a lot of soul searching, I think, required to get.
I think that's what's going on right now, for sure.
Well, and if it ain't busted, don't fix it, kind of concept.
Everyone in the industry said that very same thing to me. Every agent, every manager, every artist team said, if it's not broke, what are you guys doing? You had the operations figured out, you had the logistics figured out, you had the marketing, all that stuff. But the one thing I am realizing, and it's a hard lesson. We learn a lot of hard lessons. I learned a lot of hard lessons building that festival. And the new team will have their lessons as well. Change is inevitable.
Oh yeah, I'm all into that.
Mm-hmm.
But you still got to harp back on if it ain't busted, don't fix it.
I wish I had a bell in here because I'd be ringing it. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. And it seems a shame that we've had a cancellation. And I
first one outside the pandemic, which every single person had to deal with. Yeah, it's bittersweet. It hurts a little bit,
And honestly, I know for a lot of people who really do look forward to that every year was a huge disappointment. Because the lineup this year was phenomenal. I was just recently looking at it again, and what what a group of musicians to come up there. I know a lot of people were super excited about it, and I know, the cancellation of the show has been a huge story, and it's been mirrored with controversy. And then, of course, I reached out to Kris, probably a month and a half ago about when he was in Mexico about coming on the show. Shout out to Isaiah Rickman Inc., who just does great work on everything he does. And he's a great guy. Like, you call up Isaiah, he's going to shoot it straight to you. Fully endorse him here on the show. And if you want to get in touch with him, hit us up, and we'll put you in touch. Can do your, electrical, plumbing needs, all this kind of stuff. But
he helped me on such a personal level.
Yeah.
During my time of need. I cannot speak more highly of the man.
I mean, just a phenomenal dude, because he'd hit me up after going. He called me one day. He said, "Billy, man," he said, "I got Kris Hodges, big guy for FloydFest, doing some work for him, and I, mentioned coming on the show. Here's his number. Give him a call." Can't thank him enough, because this has been, great. But I know that disappointed a lot of people. And when we first reached out to Kris a couple of months ago, I guess the focus was going to be on the show, a little bit on the festival and everything. And here in the meantime, he has stepped down as a partner, I guess, in the whole deal, which has also, added on some controversy that just happened last week. And I guess everybody wants to speculate. And me, as somebody who probably doesn't know a lot about it, and I probably would say somewhere down the line, it probably all started going wrong for you all, in my humbled opinion. And somewhere around the mid, 2010s, decided to allow the Holwell Grace Band to come play. And I think when somebody made that decision, you set in motion a turn of events.
Is that what started it?
That were ultimately going to. And it's not because the Holwell Grace Band is phenomenal, except for the lead, who the namesake is, and that would be Josh Grace. Josh Grace is a horrible musician, who has managed to get lucky through. I can only speculate that he made some deal with the devil to be able to articulate himself well, to get on stage and fool people. But most of the time,
I can't even remember what. Are you serious? I can't even remember what he sounds like.
Most of the time, you can find him singing on the corner of Hirschberger and Williamson or something for dollars.
Are you serious?
No, he's not.
Okay, I'm trying to keep up here, man.
You can't. I mean, what he's doing to poor Josh, I love him dearly. The guy is a talented musician, a great front man, and you chop his legs from under him at every opportunity. Even when he plays for you free at the Spike Cohen show, you absolutely obliterate him. The guy is a legend.
So that was 2010 when they played.
No, I don't. It might have been 2014 or 15. They were a local band, and I guess it was one of the deals where.
And I book all the bands. I remember the name. It's hard to remember the sound.
Oh, I understand. Like they got a pretty good, decent, unique sound. Like I do like them a lot. And actually, we use the Holwell Grace Band to bring us into every show and end every single show. So
beautiful.
I give him tons of promotion out there.
Kyle did a great set.
Kyle does phenomenal too. Tin Can Locomotive. I mean, those guys. That's what I love about the area is them guys showed up and didn't ask for a dime. They just wanted to show up because they believed in what we're doing, and we try and promote them as much as we possibly.
Relationships.
There you go.
All about the relationships, man.
Because all I'm asking people to do right now, and I want you to go into this about when you were younger and you started FloydFest, but for what I'm trying to do here, and I'm hoping Simon to some extent, is come help us out now. Believe in us now while it's going to be difficult and you might lose a little bit of time. You might not make money. Believe in us now, and in 5 or 10 years, I promise you when it swings back around, I will have a gig that will pay you triple what you're making right now. Just believe in us, and we can do things.
That's kind of how you build it. You have to believe in it. You can't, one of the statements I've always hated is you fake it till you make it. I can't stand that statement because you can't. You got to be so honest, and I think, when I first started FloydFest, I didn't have a dime, but I believed in it. I was like, just take a chance, man. I'm not, there's no shuck and jive here. This is honest mission,
you were in it to win it.
Absolutely in it to win it, So it does happen. And luckily that happened. And we got the support of an audience, and it built and it built and it built. And it takes so much hard work. Oh my God. It takes an incredible amount of hard work and commitment, and just like in any great endeavor, just takes commitment and hard work. I think
that's the irony is it's a one-time event.
That's what I wanted it to be. I wanted one event to put steak on the table
Yep.
and to make an impact, man, and keep my life still with my kids and my family, and have my life still, for God's sakes.
And that one event, how on earth can you let that slip through your fingers? I firmly believe FloydFest will resurrect itself.
And even if it doesn't resurrect itself, even if it's
it has to,
or even if it's another form, even if it's something Kris might do differently on the side, maybe it's not FloydFest, maybe it's somewhere different. Maybe the spirit of it can still go on. You know what I mean? The spirit of what you believed in, what you brought, and the lessons you have learned can be taken and applied. If not back to that, if things don't work out to that degree, then something else. Because I know good and well, Kris, only knowing you here for a little bit, you're kind of like us. The wheels are always turning. You've always got things. Stokes in the fire. You've always got options. You have to be successful in this world.
Right.
You always
exactly.
have to
you have to strategize constantly.
4 steps ahead.
And that's the thing. That's the thing I tried to bring to the company always. I tried to bring a 10,000-foot view. Because if you don't have that, and I used to make jokes, you wake up with something in the rear that you really wish wasn't there, man. And I'm not saying that it was that, metaphorically speaking, but it's true. I think to find success, as you say, in this world, you have to be a strategist. You have to understand pattern recognition. You have to understand when you've made a mistake. You have to be accountable. You have to learn from those mistakes. You have to apply that to the landscape that's in front of you as well. So yeah, strategizing is a huge deal to surviving in this world and to become successful. And I've always tried to do that for this company. It's not an easy feat to maintain a festival for 21 years.
Well, and that's where that name awareness, I think, is so key. Is that you've generated such impetus behind that name awareness,
a brand,
and it's absolutely a brand.
And I think that speaks to the loyalty that the rollovers were incredibly strong.
Yeah,
from the cancellation this year, incredibly strong because the brand is that strong. It's a wonderful thing.
So that in my perspective on that is that the brand has such value that it needs to continue to be successful in whatever format it comes in.
Absolutely. I think the spirit of anything that's true will always manifest itself in some form or another and always survive. Just like the digital landscape versus performers actually playing.
Look where we are now. It's coming back full circle.
It always does.
And that to me, that thrills me that it's coming back that direction.
I love being in the live music space because you're always going to get that. You know what I mean? If it's done right. And I've always said it's not who you bring, it's how you bring it. So as a promoter end of things, you have to really know how to set the stage. And then you get the best out of a performer. And that's kind
of course. And that's really where I think Tyler has made such a major impact in the local scene in Roanoke with 5 Points with that venue. That venue is extraordinary. It's extraordinary. And when you accept it as extraordinary, then pick your time to go in there. But man, go to 5 Points. It's rocking.
You've got so many great venues here locally, but at the end of the day, you don't always you don't need the most spectacular venue. You don't need the flashy lights. You need a place where the people who run the venue give a shit,
really care
exactly
about the musicians, about the patrons, about the customer, all of it. Care. Honestly,
yeah,
it's not just a shtick. We're not selling used cars here.
And the acoustics that we got out of 5 Points watching Crawford and Powers was smoking. For a small venue, wow.
And the small listening rooms are great when they're done right.
Well, and that show right there too. We've talked about it before, and it's about the power of music, about the power of sound. Like for me, Jake and Ethan, I love them boys to death. I love what they're doing. They play a genre of country music that I don't particularly care for that much. It's more the modern genre of country, but I think
it's honest.
Well, when I sit there and think about it, why do I dislike so much of the modern country. Well,
Like when you say modern country, what do you mean? Like pop, mainstream?
yeah,
country?
yeah. Your poppy Nashville stuff, and I'm not saying their stuff is super
Because then
poppy.
you got Zach Bryan. I mean,
Well, I'm trying to compare them to something because I don't listen to any modern day country, but they play stuff that'll get picked up by the radio, I guess is the best way to put it. And they can chart with what they play. It's that kind of stuff. It's not your Waylon Jennings. It's more of your Garth Brooks or kind of stuff. But
Tim McGraw.
yeah, a lot of the big reason I don't like that stuff is because I look at them people and I kind of know their background, and it's just not genuine. It's something that was written by somebody else, and they're just going out there performing. They are performers. Now, Jake and Ethan, to a certain extent, not only are they great performers, but the stuff they are writing is theirs. They are writing it. It's not somebody else writing it. They are legit. They grew up around here. So
I imagine they might be a pretty cool cast.
There's one word for that: authenticity.
So I can have a lot of fun, even though it's not my
I think
genre.
that's what people want. I think that's what FloydFest represented was being authentic.
Yeah,
you know, straight up.
And that really was, and that Quarter and Power show at 5 Points was
energy.
It was
energy.
It was authentic.
Yes,
you know, and they took control of the audience by not overdriving the sound, right? And now whoever was running the board there at 5 Points on that evening knew what they were doing, because you can overdrive a sound in a small venue and kill it.
Let me ask you about this, a technique that I'm pretty sure it was a technique, and I've heard it before, but let me get your take on this. So I was down in Kentucky, and I was watching Zach Brown recently in front of 40,000 people, and you could barely hear it. But if you noticed, they were doing that to pull the people in, and then they were raising the volume ever so slightly to every song, so it like was part of the actual show.
The sound guy knew what he was doing.
Exactly. It was amazing. Yeah. He was as much a part of the show as anyone.
And he was the ultimate puppeteer behind that.
Yes.
And that's what he was.
Yes.
And when you can do that,
so he was actually doing that for sure.
But all those levels of sound that he's got to mix and then be able to drive that sound is an art form.
Absolutely. It's as
and
much as drawing the audience into.
If the audience doesn't know
exactly, they didn't. I picked up on it because my ears are trained for this kind of thing.
They got had.
That's exactly right.
Because he knew what he was doing.
Oh yeah,
and he just drove them. It was
brilliant.
A crescendo.
It was a brilliant crescendo. It was lovely.
That's an art form.
Yeah, man.
See, this is ridiculous stuff that people don't think about.
No, they don't.
They don't think about what all goes into a show and how somebody at the soundboard can make such a difference.
And why Zach Brown's getting paid $3 million a gig right now is because it's working. And he skirted the whole Nashville scene. He skirted the machine of that pop country thing. Good. And it's incredible to see a guy do that, and his whole team is behind him. You're only as good as your team, really.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Well, now this harps back on to the projects I was in Laurel Canyon. And to a certain extent, when you encounter an artist that, in my mind, was sublime, he may not have had. You know what? I'm going to backtrack a little bit there, because I think he did. I mean, I think he had every. He could have done it and taken it the whole way, but the alternative was to have some of his tracks covered by, and this is how Nashville works, certain artists that you think would fit the song. Now, if you have the ability to write a song where you can craft it to fit an artist, that is a money-making machine. And that's, is that going down the road of being too commercial? I don't think so.
Yeah.
Because there's and we all know them, you know, when you hear the original version and let's say someone way more famous has done a cover of it, and you've now been addicted to the cover version, when you hear the original artist you think, ooh, was that better? Or And then when you and that's always an intriguing question. When an original artist writes a song,
And it's better by someone who
performs
covers it.
and then someone who covers it does it better.
It's
It's
just
the
a
it's the
different
ultimate
interpretation.
compliment.
Yeah, it really is. It is.
Absolutely.
You want to create something that's great for other people to take and even make it greater.
right.
How
Absol-
often does
absolutely.
that happen?
Also, well, it's actually done an enormous amount, more than you would ever know.
Well, to some degree.
Oh, yeah.
I'm talking about when you're thinking about the biggest of all time. You know what I mean? When you're talking about the great hits, you're talking about people doing covers of pop. You know what I mean? Of course, all the time there are people who pick up songs and end up doing it better, and they make more commercial success.
Buddy Holly and the Beatles, Words of Love.
Or what about like something like Voodoo Child? Who did it better, Stevie
Ray or Jimi Hendrix.
A lot of people say Stevie Ray did it better.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I mean that's a tough one.
Yep.
Suspicious Minds, who did it better, Elvis or Dwight Yoakam? I mean, there's you have different,
Maybe not better, but different, man.
different, but very rarely to the bigger songs can somebody do it differently and see the same kind of success.
Right, maintain the integrity of the
there
song.
you go. There you go. That's what I'm looking
Well,
for.
now
Maintain integrity.
I've seen, and I've seen this more on some of these reality shows, America's Got Talent, with Simon Cowell doing his thing. And there's some
Cousin of yours.
cousin of mine. But I've seen
Y'all stop now. We talked about this.
Yeah. I've seen and heard some fantastic covers by some of the musicians that go on these sorts of shows, and I'm not taking away their ability at all to make a rearrangement that is unique, is a talent in itself. So rearranging a classic hit to come up with something that is so pleasing, even more so than the original, is an absolute gift. So rearrangement of a cover, to me, is putting your mark of uniqueness on it, and I dig it. I get it. And there's very few people that can do it.
So there's very few people that can be authentic.
But it comes back to authenticity,
man.
Yeah.
And that's what was going through my mind as you were saying. It's like, yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. But the quality of the artist and the authenticity of the artist, I think, is what's making that song sound so much fresher.
Yeah.
Fresher and a new interpretation. And that's a beautiful thing. It goes to the authenticity of the artist.
But also, now you consider where the money is made, because it comes down to money, and the money goes to the royalties of the writer of the music, or the publishing company, or however those points are all divided.
Ask and kiss my cap.
Indeed, or yeah, exactly. So there's lots of artists out there that have never received a financial reward, and there's some that have made their financial reward. And I'm not going to say, I say this very tongue-in-cheek, by prostituting their talent as a songwriter, an artist, and being able to give that song to a current talent that can present it, that is going to make them a lot of money too. So there's a business angle in writing music, melodies, songs, and lyrics, performing them, and rights too. And it's a very complex.
The art of business.
And it is a business. And Nashville does it very well.
Oh, it's the epicenter machine of the industry right now.
And rightly or wrongly, I don't always approve of corporate music over raw talent.
I love raw talent personally. Not to say that the corporate machine doesn't create a level of excitement.
Right.
You know?
I mean, look at Darius Rucker's hit song,
Wagon Wheel.
Wagon Wheel.
Originally an Old Crow Medicine show, too.
Fantastically done by the original artist, but Darius put just another level of interpretation on that. And you've got to give him credit because he did it very well.
broke him out of the Hootie and the Blowfish
They sure did.
zone.
Well,
But he still kept that.
but still look at. But
Why not?
I mean, there's
Why not?
Make
But
that
he-
money, exactly.
He
Make
stepped
double the
into
money.
that zone and became one of the early kind of modern pop black country artists for
Yeah.
sure.
and possibly one of the most successful. And I give him absolute credit for it. The guy's an amazing talent, and as a country artist, I think he's absolutely amazing. But case in point, there with that song, everyone goes, "Oh, well, that's Darius Rucker." Well, actually, no. The original, when you listen to it, is damn smoking too.
Yeah.
So there's those two interpretations, and who earned the money from it? And it wasn't Darius Rucker. The guy that wrote the song earned the money. Darius Rucker, when he performs it, is part of his live
Wasn't
acts.
Wagon Wheel written in part by Bob Dylan, and then Catch took it on? Yeah,
I think so.
I
that
believe it
is
was.
that's the root of it. Yeah,
So,
it was an unfinished song, and then Old Crow Catch took it and turned it into.
and
a
there's
full
so many of those stories out there with original songs that were, Prince did some amazing music that he allowed other people to cover for him, but ultimately he made the money, and that's a smart business move. So I mean, I get the music business, and I see what it strives to do. What worries me about the music business is its power is as a suppressant for exploding talent. It's so complex, and there's so many talents have been crushed by the corporate music industry.
It's very difficult.
Which is a tragedy.
It's very, very difficult.
Yeah.
Hey, folks, that is the end of part one of our show with Kris Hodges. We hope you enjoyed it. Stick around for part two. It is really enjoyable as well. We'll continue on with some of the good conversation. If you want to go ahead and hear part two right now, you can go to patreon.com/getontap for only $3 a month. You get to support us. You get all these shows in their entirety before everybody else. And you also get first dibs on a lot of the events and things we've got coming up here in the near future. If you want to just do a one-time donation, you can do that at paypal.com/WBRiddle or Get on Tap at Venmo or Cash Get on Tap at the Cash App. But once again, for the Patreon subscribers, it's patreon.com/Get on Tap to hear the rest of this show. And we'll catch you next time.